Yes, actually, I just got off with the phone with the governor here about 20 minutes ago, and he told us what he told you, which was that that we had kind of basic agreement on the numbers as far as the education bill was concerned, and I think there are a few other outstanding issues. I was over with Jamie Tincher earlier in the governor's office, going through some of those other details. I think we're fairly close on the other issues. We're trading some compromise language on the environment bill, and we're checking on just a couple of things on the energy bill, and I think we'll have it wrapped up. So my hope is that we could even have agreement yet this afternoon, but we'll see how quickly.
Good staff working on it.
Yeah. Our research staff is kind of working on it, as is the governor's. So.
Okay, walk through it with us bill by bill.
Sure.
You agree on the money in education, but are there...
Right, and the governor still wants to talk, and we'll probably meet hopefully today yet about the breakdown of where that money would go. I think they'd like to make some little language changes to a couple of the programs. Our staff is kind of reviewing that now. We haven't seen exactly what they want, but I think we know, so we're kind of reviewing what's possible there. All of the points that are still outstanding I would call kind of minor points at this time, so I think in the grand scheme of things, I think we've got a kind of a general agreement on what this looks like. So,
ag environment, avian flu money, and buffer language has to stay the way it is, he says.
Yep. And that was never really a point of any of our discussions. We had agreed upon language. It was passed with agreed upon language. And as long as some of the other reforms stayed in the environment bill, we didn't have a problem with the buffer language or any of that. So the bill will stay that way on those points that you just mentioned.
And he's standing firm on a fix for the state auditor provision.
He and I talked about that on the phone just a little while ago, and I let him know again, as I had earlier. That's a really tough one because he just signed the bill into law. I'm not sure, it was part of a package, and of course there were other concessions that our members made in that bill. I'm not sure that we can get the votes right now to repeal that. So I told the governor I was still willing to talk to him about it, but it looks difficult at this point to make any changes there. The other thing that I think makes that difficult is there's no kind of impending, that the enactment language doesn't happen until I think a year and a half from now. So we have another session, and we'll have a legislative auditor's report on that before it goes into effect. So we'll still have another session that we can take.
And this is something the counties want too. They like the way it worked out.
The counties have wanted this for a long time, frankly, since I was a county commissioner. They've and before. So they've wanted this change, and I don't, hopefully the legislative auditor's report will give us some, a glimpse as to whether this is really needed or not. And if the legislative auditor's report shows it's not needed, we'll have another session to make that change.
Could you walk us through the environmental provisions a little bit? What did you want that you've given up? What did he want that he's given up? He mentioned the MPCA Citizens Board.
Sure.
What else?
Yep. The MPCA Citizens Board, that language will stay in the bill the way it was, with that Citizens Board going away. The buffer language will stay the way it was in the bill that was passed. I'm trying to remember what I just looked
a
at.
little bit on the rulemaking.
Yeah,
stuff.
the rulemaking. There's been some back and forth and some give and take on the rulemaking language, and that's really where most of the discussion has been, policy-wise, on that particular bill. So hopefully we'll know about that shortly.
15 years to meet, for cities to meet the water quality standards?
This was a provision that came in from the Senate DFL up in the Red River watershed. Is that the one you're referring to? Yeah, that came from the Senate DFL, that provision. And so it wasn't something we spent a lot of time discussing, but it's our understanding that language will stay the way that it was in the bill.
The governor doesn't like it. He was very firmly against it a few minutes ago.
Okay.
Well, that was Senate language.
That was really between the governor and the Senate DFL on that particular issue.
Are there any issues in the jobs, economic development, commerce, energy? Are there issues outstanding on that we should be aware of?
There are. It sounds like the EITE language, which was kind of a carve out on the Iron Range, sounds like that language is going to come out of the bill. A couple of other provisions were coming out of the bill.
There's the emerging workforce stuff. Which, of course, is this all a done deal? This is stuff we're talking about, but there's some trailer
trailer language.
trailer language in there.
There was some insurance analysis stuff.
Ask that question again, sorry.
There was some language at Commerce with the people who analyze insurance rates and whatnot.
Yeah, the funding was missing for that. So the level of funding that we agreed upon was $900,000 for that particular line item, which was less than what was asked for, but that was what was agreed to.
So is whatever rural workforce development money still going to be in it?
Yeah.
And broadband the way it passed?
The way it passed, except without the earmark for
Annandale.
For Annandale.
Yeah.
So
It's the same amount of money, but not a specific earmark for Annandale.
What are the biggest hangups right now then?
I don't know that there are a lot
we're
of
really
hang-ups.
close right now. So the governor wants to talk a little more about how that extra money for K-12 education will be spent. But I think that I actually think we were kind of in basic agreement on most of that over the last few days. It was just the total level of spending. So that was really the outstanding point. But I think we're there. So
Some
You're back to the main issue being education, even though it's not big as big as it was. That's still the big.
right. But I actually think we're there on that one too. We just haven't had the time to sit down now and go through the details of parceling out where all that money will go.
What was it about that figure 525 that brought you back to that at this time?
Well, that was the number. That was the lowest number that the governor had come out with in his offers. That was the point at which we were closest. So it made sense to us that if he was okay with that number, we could compromise and come to that point in order to get this wrapped up in an efficient manner. So
on that offer, were there details that when he made that offer on the last night of session, were there any sort of details in it that he wanted, or are those some of the details that you work out now? For instance, how much money might go for early learning scholarships for school readiness?
right. I think the general details are in agreement, which is. Some money will go into a few smaller programs. The remainder of that money will be split between the scholarships and school readiness. And that was pretty much agreed on then, and it has continued to be agreed upon. And it was really how we parceled the money out in the bill that we passed out of the House and the Senate. That's how we divided that money up as well. So the agreement with the governor will look very much like that.
So is this agreement coming today? Were you all impacted by the state employees getting their notices today and the fears that people were feeling?
Well, obviously that's what I think. I kind of woke up this morning. I had been thinking about this all weekend, and kind of woke up this morning and said, you know what? Let's just agree to his last number. And I had to come in and visit with folks in the caucus about that. And ultimately, we thought getting this wrapped up in an efficient manner. I mean, we really were $25 million apart. So. Do we stay dug in? Does the governor stay dug in? And we end up, we were $50 million apart, but really we were $25 million apart from the closest place we had been. So we just made a decision that, we'll give a little more, even though we had come more than halfway already. We'll give a little more just to get this wrapped up in time, and so that these folks, it did impact, I think us a little bit. We thought today was a good opportunity to show these folks who might be receiving layoff notices that we do care about them, and we do want to let them at least know with some certainty that they shouldn't be worried about whether they're going to have a job on July 1st.
Is it fair to say that this deal came about because you gave up LIFO and he gave up $25 million?
Potentially. I guess that's accurate. I think, late in the day Friday, he gave up on pre-K for the second time. He had given up on that on the last day of session, but then went back to it. But he gave it up again late in the day on Friday. So, yeah, just adjusting. But also remember that particular provision cost $100 million in his proposal, in his latest proposal. So when you remove the policy, he still wanted to keep the money and spend it on other things. So once we could, adjust that a little bit, we had general agreement.
Do you think he's digging in his heels now on this auditor issue, or can this be resolved, do you think?
I think it can be. Well, unfortunately, I think the governor probably is realizing that if that was an issue that was a sticking point in the bill, he probably should have vetoed that bill rather than signing it. It makes it much more difficult for us now to correct that being that he just signed that into law. I think it's also important to remember that there's not an immediate need to do something. That language doesn't take effect for a year and a half. So we do have time to review the legislative auditor's report and have some hearings on it, make some determinations on whether we need to repeal that or whether it can stay the way it is or make some changes to it. And we can do that next session.
So on the other hand, well, I was just going to follow up. On the other hand, you don't need to have it in law then, if it wasn't going to take effect for a couple years anyway.
Right, but the problem is getting the votes now to change it, because our caucus obviously gave up some concessions because that was an important point to them. So while that bill spent more money than our members were comfortable with, that was one of the policy reforms that we thought was important. So it's difficult at this point now to get votes to pull that out. So I think it's likely to stay in.
Could you just walk us through the machinations that need to happen to get the special session started? Let's say you strike a deal tonight. How quickly can members come back? How quickly can the rooms be ready? How quickly can the bills be written? All of that kind of stuff is your job.
Well, I mean, I think that as far as where the room is going to be in the location, they've been working on it. The logistics are there. The revisor's office will need a couple days to work through the process. Of course, that's after staff gets together and kind of gets the details. So then a couple days after that to get the bills put together. And I mean, I think probably 2 or 3 days we could, once it's set, 2 or 3 days we could get it going.
How much time do the members need to come back from their farms and vacations and?
It depends on where they are, but I mean, I think the speaker's been fairly clear that, you know, this is something could happen imminently and that they should try to be around to the extent that they can.
Happen as soon as Thursday or Friday, theoretically.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. It absolutely could happen yet this week. And I did have that conversation with the governor. I think we're waiting until we get some of these outstanding issues buttoned up. But provided we can get that tonight or early tomorrow, we likely are looking at a special session on Thursday or Friday of this week.
One big bill. Governor wants everything wrapped into one.
We will look at that. It's probably less likely to do it that way than to do them the way they are now. You know, you can't put the bonding bill in with the others, so you at least have to do two anyway.
And we're technically supposed to have single issue bills, so
Yeah.
there's that little problem.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Bonding is the other thing I wanted to ask about. Sure. Is that between you folks in the Senate now then? The governor?
Right. The governor and I talked about that on the phone, the bonding bill. He has said he wants a bonding bill to take care of the Capitol, of course, but he said he would leave the details of that up to the 4 caucus leaders to work out the differences.
Disaster, avian flu, Capitol?
Right.
Anything else you could accept, or do you have to negotiate all that?
We actually had a bill prepped on the last night of session that was about $100 million that included, it did have some rail grade crossing language for a few of those projects. What else was in that bill? There was no Senate
Capitals.
Parking ramp.
Disaster.
No. Yeah, there was some disaster relief money in the way of some flood money. There was one up in Otter Tail County. There was actually 3 of them.
And then some of the Albright, yeah.
Right.
There's
The
Albright
one in
had-
Carver County.
From a year ago,
Correct.
almost.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
But those are all in Republican districts. Do you have Democratic votes to make a bonding bill happen? That was your issue on the 18th.
Putting in some rail grade crossing stuff. And actually the lead on the House side from the Democrats will be involved with sitting down and putting together what a bill looks like. So our hope is that we'll have enough votes, but at the end of the day, you know, we're not putting in individual member project requests just in order to buy votes. This is really one of those kind of non-bonding year, emergency relief, kind of immediate need. You know, for instance, the Capitol is the 3rd phase of the Capitol now, the final phase of the Capitol. So this is really one of those kind of, only things that are really urgent that should be generally acceptable to all members. So I don't think that there should be difficulty getting votes, but if the minority decides they don't want to put up votes,
Then we won't have a bonding bill.
I guess. So, but we're open to taking their suggestions on what should be in it. So
Have you talked to Thiessen?
I have over the weekend. I talked to him.
Acceptable to what you're talking about?
Well, I think our discussion was about getting their minority lead and the chair of the committee together to kind of start hammering out those details. So,
When and where do you meet with the governor tonight?
we have not scheduled anything yet. I'm not sure that he and I will need to meet. At this point, it's kind of at the staff level working out the differences in these bills. I was with the lieutenant governor a couple of hours ago and the chief of staff. a commissioner and a committee chair kind of working out the differences on some of these bills. And I think we got to general agreement on the concepts of what should be in that environment bill. And now they're just going and finding language to execute what we believe is the intent, everybody's intent in that room. So
We expect to come out tomorrow and announce a deal.
I would expect that. Our hope is to put signatures on a piece of paper, I think, today yet or tomorrow.
So what could derail this process? Are we there? Are we almost there? Are we all but there?
I would say we're almost there. I think, and I think the things that are outstanding yet to be agreed upon are minor. So at this point, I think this is, likely to happen the way we have it agreed to, and my expectation is it'll happen either yet today or tomorrow, where we'll actually sign the agreement. But at this point, it's mostly just technical matters that we're kind of working out. It doesn't seem to be any real major outstanding sticking points.
And you'll have Susan keep us informed on this.
She's really good, isn't she?
Yes, she is. So we'll know when the deal's really a deal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Governor Dayton is really profoundly unhappy with the deal that you're about to enter into. How do you feel about the deal you're about to enter into?
I would say that it's not what I would have chosen had I, at the beginning, but ultimately, Minnesotans sent us here to work together and to compromise and to represent them and their interests, and really to work on the problems they care about. And I think that's what we've done. There are things that I wished would have happened this session that didn't, long-term transportation funding, but obviously insistence on a gas tax made that difficult. But there are things that were great that happened this session, like the long-term funding for nursing homes, which I think is just generational reform. So there are things I'm really excited about and things that I'm disappointed about. The overall level of spending is greater than I would like to see, but I wasn't the final arbiter of all of that. So we're just one leg of the three legs of the stool. So
How do you explain to the public, though, this $1 billion unspent? Is that good fiscal management or poor fiscal management?
Well, it's good fiscal management. If we were to spend every dime that was available because of the nature of where that money comes from, if the economy even stayed the same as it is right now, not even decreased or declined, the state would be headed for a deficit. So the fact that we're leaving some money on the bottom line, I think, will provide an incredible amount of stability and flexibility should anything happen unexpected with the economy. It also allows us next year to come back. I think that we're going to leave about $875 million on the bottom line. I don't know that that's ever happened before after a budget has been set. Next year, we'll have the ability to come back and solve the transportation really on a long-term basis, which I think is really important. And we'll also have the ability to do some tax relief. So I think that's what Minnesotans expect. So,
Thank you.
yep, sounds great. Thank you so much.